is Christian, and right now I am soldering this piece of wire. Currently there was some excess flux on there that I have to get off, so I'm going to use the weight to remove it. I'm going to place my soldering iron under the piece of metal, and as that's heating up, I'm going to get ready to place my weight onto the excess weight, excess flux. You can come over here. As you can see, it's starting to heat up and the smoke is coming. So as that happens, I'm going to take my wake and I'm going to place it over the excess flux so it can start absorbing into that. Just like that, I'm done. I removed what I wanted to remove without damaging the wire. I'm going to dry clean my soldering iron, and I'm going to put it on the wet clean and take it back in its holster. Now I'm going to move on to soldering. This is the 5th type of splice that we learned. It is a cross of a solid wire and stranded wire. I already applied the flux. All I have to do is I'm going to take my soldering iron, I'm going to place it under the wire on the flat side. And as I heat up the flux, I'm going to apply my iron to the wire. So once it heats up, I can start driving the iron through the wire, which is going to give me a solid connection. The iron has finally heated the wire to what I need to do, so I'm going to move my iron, the soldering iron, and my material as I can solder. I'm going with the middle. Now I'm moving over to the right side. And as it's heating up the right side of the wire, I'm going to slowly start putting pressure on the material so it can go into. Just like that, the right side's done. So I'm going to take my soldering iron, I'm going to move over to the left side, place it under the wire. And as the wire heats up, I'm going to slowly start applying pressure. So once it gets to the 750 degrees I need it to, I can just feed. As the wire is heating up, I'm going to apply pressure to slowly feed my material to the wire. And I'm done. Just like that, I've made a solid connection. I'm going to use the heat gun to apply these heat shrinks onto the wire. As the wires are stripped and it is showing bare wires, so after I put this on, it's going to give it some protection. And just like that, I've completed my task of soldering the wire and completing a heat shrink on it.
Hello, my name is Eric, and we have 5 types of splice, and I'm gonna do the Mary splice. I'm gonna do the reinforcement. As we see, this is a mirror splice, and this is not strong enough, and it's easy to pull out. And to make it more strong, and we have to use another system to make it more strong. So we start to and this is how we get a strong mirror splice. I will try to pull it, and it's not gonna separate. And then the next step is to welding. We're gonna use some rods. And then we're gonna start and this is how I get a good mirror splice. It's already welding, and that's it.
Hey, I'm Jaden Hood, and I'm going to be showing you how you know what size your wire is and how to solder a marriage splice. So essentially, on most pieces of wire along the outer insulation, you'll see various writing that can tell you where the wire is from and how many volts it can withstand. And including in the writing is the size, which this black wire right here is 14 gauge or 2.8 or 0.8 millimeters. And with our wire strippers, and there's a bunch of holes that are very blade-like, and they'll get through the insulation and allow you to get to your bare wire. So we'll stick our wire in the 14 gauge hole. And it's as simple as that. Since we're doing a marriage splice, we'll want to cut this bit end off and cut it and strip us another end. Now for a marriage splice, you want to have the wire as identical of length as you can. And just by eyeballing these are pretty close in length, so we can just go ahead and use these without any worry. You want to untighten the wire or uncoil it by turning towards you to the left. You're going to do that for both of them. Then you'll grab hold of each wire like this and begin to connect them. And you want to get them as close to the plastic as possible so you can get a great connection. And then you'll twist in the opposite direction you did to uncoil the wire. and each wire in opposite directions. So from my right hand I'm twisting forward, and from my left hand I'm twisting back. And there we have our marriage splice. And to solder this marriage splice, you'll place it in your wire holder so you can properly solder the wire without any worry of it flying everywhere. And to begin soldering, you'll take a toothpick and apply some flux to it. And all flux does is it removes the oxide layer on the outside of the copper wire so you can get a proper and good connection. And you can be pretty generous with flux, so there's no need for you to be any kind of skimpy with it. And now that our wire is all fluxed up, we can begin the soldering process. Take your iron and be extremely careful not to touch below this black area right here, as it's 750 degrees. And here in my hand I have a little bit of solder that we'll be using in a moment. And before you begin soldering, you always want to make sure your iron has a clean tip. And I've already cleaned this tip, so there's no need for me to dry clean with the brass sponge or the wet clean with the wet sponge. And you begin by tinning the tip with a little bit of solder. And all tinning the tip does is gives the wire a little immediate bit of heat, so the wire can heat up a bit faster and keeps you from burning any of these plastic edges right here. Tin the tip a little bit more just to make sure it heats up a little bit faster. Actually, my tip is a little bit dirty, so I'll dry clean with the brass sponge that's in here and wet clean with the damp sponge right there. That will give me a clean surface to allow the heat to transfer properly. Now that our wire is heated up at the proper temperature, we can begin to feed the solder into the wire and make us a good connection. As you can see, there are a few parts over, like on the right hand side, that aren't quite hot yet, so we can slide our iron without it leaving the wire surface and get it nice and hot. And we can feed our iron. Slide our iron a little bit. And feed our iron. And there we go. We've now made a good solid connection with the marriage splice. And this wire in particular can be used in low voltage applications like think TV remotes or anything with batteries. And there we go.